Hi, I'm Jill, Chief Safety Officer with Vivid Learning Systems. I'm a former OSHA inspector, and I'm here to help you identify and correct workplace safety hazards. For this series, we're at the University of Louisville in beautiful Kentucky to show you no matter where you work, safety is for everyone. We often say that it's a global world with regard to the speed that information travels and the speed with which we can travel the globe, actually. And with that comes some responsibility. If you happen to have a job where you are traveling for your work, it's your employer's responsibility to identify the hazards that could be associated with that travel with regard to your health. And it's the same as identifying any kind of workplace hazard. We're just thinking about it in a little different way. But it is the employer's responsibility to be thinking ahead before you're making that next trip. And today I am with Dr. Ruth Carrico at the University of Louisville. Dr. Ruth Carrico is an associate professor in the Division of Infectious Diseases and a family nurse practitioner, and the associate founding director of the University of Louisville's Global Health Center. And we're here to talk about global health, particularly when employees are traveling. And so, can you talk with us maybe about some of those things employers should be doing to help their employees in that pre-travel planning to ensure that they are traveling safely, they're staying healthy while they're traveling, and they're coming back feeling well?
Sure, and I think, we've all seen that commercial on TV that goes something like, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, that only applies to Vegas. When you're traveling internationally, whatever is occurring in any part of the world becomes important to individuals, not only that live there, but those that are going to be going there. We are comfortable with our own routine. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, we've got great water. We're used to good food, safe and good sanitation. When we travel, it's different. And it doesn't mean that any place is unsanitary or dirty. It means it's different. And so we need to be prepared to address that. So as an employer, we need to be thinking, what type of environment are we sending our employees into? And then thinking about how do we maintain their health? Because remember, those employees are going to come back, right? And so whatever they bring back to them may impact not only them, their family, but potentially others in their workplace. So we need to be aware of what is happening in the country or countries that they will be visiting as part of their work, and then think about how do we protect them and how do we do that preemptively. How do we plan and think, what can we provide for you now? And not only what type of medication, what type of vaccines, but also how do we think about health behavior and health promotion.
When you meet with employees for an appointment, what sort of information do you share with them?
Well, I talk about some of the things that everybody does. Everybody eats and everybody drinks and everybody breathes and interacts. So I'm going to start with the things that you drink. So we'll talk about, how are you assured of safe drinking water? What do you need to be considering before you drink? So we'll do things like, give somebody props or those types of things that will prompt them to make safe decisions. So for example, we'll say, all right, when you travel, we only want you to drink bottled water or fluids that are commercially packaged. And so start that from the time you get off of the airplane and make sure then that you always have access to safe drinking water. That just helps people think ahead. Then we'll think about what are the things that you're going to be eating when you're there. So we'll promote the notion of eat foods that are cooked, eat foods that can be safely consumed. So that may mean something that can't be cooked, you need to peel it yourself before you eat it. Then we'll think about, well, what are those little animals that you may come in contact with, specifically those mosquitoes that are going to bite you, and what types of illnesses can those mosquitoes transmit? And then we'll begin to think about, what is it that you need to do with respect to, preventing you from being so attractive to a mosquito. And then what do we need to do in terms of vaccines that will help then not only prevent illnesses that may be transmitted by a mosquito, yellow fever comes to mind, but also then what are those other vaccines that could prevent you from becoming ill with respect to what you eat or what you drink or the types of interactions that you're going to have while you're there. So we try to look at it as a whole picture. How do we prevent disease, and then how do we promote then the types of behaviors that are going to help the individual stay well.
And so when it comes to vaccines specifically, which is an engineering control measure, that is what we use in safety terminology. So what sort of vaccines do you recommend, or how do you determine which vaccines to recommend?
Well, we really depend upon surveillance. The surveillance that has been done by both the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or our own US CDC, as well as what is being reported by the World Health Organization.
Regarding where the people are going to be.
Right. So we look to say what is happening in those countries, and we gather information about what we can determine in a country, and then we talk with that individual about, what are you going to be doing there. So somebody that's going to be camping and maybe living in a tent or sleeping in a cave, we're going to be focusing on things that are very different from someone who is traveling, and maybe they're there on business and they're going to be staying in a hotel. So we try to really tailor it to what is the actual risk for that individual.
Yeah, what kind of exposure they're going to be having.
Exactly. Yeah. So that it's meaningful to them. I don't want to be talking about, don't be bitten by a bat by someone who's not going to be near a bat. But I want to talk to someone to say, I want you to stay away and not approach animals, and if an animal is aggressive toward you, then what should you do? So, you really have to focus on what is going to be happening with that individual, but yet get those things that are going to be familiar. So, as I said, everybody is going to eat when you're on vacation. So, or when you're traveling for business. So that would be an issue that we would talk about with every person, and how you can minimize your risk, and then look at what sort of vaccines really target the pathogens that can be transmitted through that act of just routine eating and drinking.
So you're asking a lot of questions when you're meeting with someone. One of the questions that I would want to ask if I were your patient would be, in preparation for travel, what sort of personal first aid kit, if you will, of things could I be bringing from home that might help me should things go sideways.
Right. Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because, the risk of getting hurt when you travel is a pretty significant risk. So we tell people, think about the routine things like, buckle up. If you have a seatbelt, put it on. Right. But also be prepared to take care of yourself. So take along those things like ibuprofen, or something that will handle a fever or an ache or a pain. What happens if you develop diarrhea? You might want to take some over-the-counter medication, as well as the antibiotic that I may prescribe for you. But also maybe think about, am I going to be there for a long time? Maybe I need to have a thermometer. If I'm going to have my children with me, then I need to know, is this going to be a fever, an elevated temperature that's serious enough for me to want to seek medical care? And then I want to have routine medication that is familiar to me. Now, you can go into a pharmacy, international pharmacy, and you can find many, many different medication, but it may not be what I'm familiar with. And we really promote the idea that we have a Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, that really helps to protect us and provide us with safe medication. So I'd much rather you take something with you than try to find something while you're away.
Or a label that you can't read.
Exactly. Right. And even taking things like what we call oral rehydration salts. That's something that you can mix with water. If you become dehydrated, that can really help you regain some health and not either interfere with your business travel or kind of set up that downward cascade that may end up winding up in needing medical intervention. So we want people to have an excellent business trip, an excellent international travel experience, and so really many times it's kind of armed with just that basic reminder. So we'll give them a list. Here's your first aid kit, things that you can gather at home. If they need something beyond that, then we can certainly help them, and that's really why they would seek advice from individuals who have expertise in international travel medicine.
Right. I recently did some travel, and before I went, I met with an infectious disease specialist who coached me through many of the things that we're talking about today, including a vaccine. And so I guess a question is, if an employer is going to seek an appointment for their employee to do what you do, who should they be looking for, and what kind of appointment should they be asking for?
If you were going to be traveling internationally, there are two big issues. And one is who has expertise that can help me know what I need to do before I travel. And then what happens if I'm sick during travel or I return home sick. So areas of expertise that I think sometimes we forget about is not only that before you travel, but how do I access information? That's right.
While you're gone. Yeah.
That's right. So we will have patients that will call us from outside the U.S. that will say, I'm here and this is what I'm experiencing. You know, can you give me some advice? Or someone that will return home that maybe we didn't see them before they left, and they're like, oh, you know, I didn't really take that whole malaria thing very seriously. Now I'm home, I've got fever, I don't feel well. And so we see patients not only before travel, but we consult with them during travel and after travel. Those aspects, I think, really you can't underscore the importance enough that what we are seeing in the world now and the adventurous behaviors that people have, business traveling, combining business with some leisure, some pleasure travel, then that means we need to really look at our health and our safety a little bit differently. So seeking someone that has that expertise in international travel medicine, not only just pre-travel counseling, but post-travel care as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So if a community doesn't have a practitioner such as yourself, what other resources would you recommend that employers can go to and employees can go to try to arm themselves with information?
Well, I think everybody, we're all familiar with what you can achieve and attain via the internet. So I would also always start with going to the CDC website. And then there are very specific, in the search engine, you can just type in travel health. And that will take you then to a very comprehensive set of pages that you can look at countries. Maps are there for you to become familiar with, and then look and see what is present in a particular country. Our job then is to say, all right, let's take that information that is general and very comprehensive, and let's tailor it to you. So the CDC may say, if you're going to this particular country, here's a list of vaccines that we would recommend. That may not be right for every single traveler. So our idea is to tailor it to what they need and make sure that you have, right. And while at the same time we're looking at, all right, now that I've got you here, I also want to use this as our reality check moment to say, how are you with respect to your routine vaccines? So you may not need, for example, a tetanus shot before you travel internationally as part of general travel health. But that's my chance to say, you know, when you go there, you may be cut, you may be hurt, you may step on a nail, you may be in a motor vehicle accident, and so a tetanus vaccine may be relevant at that point. So let's make sure that you're up to date, right, just on your routine as well as travel vaccines.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you for sharing this information with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's really important. And remember, if you have employees who travel as part of their work, it's the employer's responsibility to ensure that we're mitigating risk for our employees, just like we would for any other workplace safety hazard. And so global health is certainly something to make part of your normal safety practices. I hope you gained a safety skill today. If you know someone who needs this, go ahead and pass it on. Safety is everyone's business.